Business Development Manager with Finance. We're a family-owned IT consultancy here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And thank you for following along in our IT Trends and IT People series. I'm here with my friend William Cornett, who is the CISO for Warren County. William, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Has it been a busy week for you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Every week's busy. It makes the day go by fast, but yeah, very busy.
I can't sit on my hands, man. I have to be doing stuff. The older I get too, man, I work remotely, and so some days I'll work 12 hours, and then some days I'll work 4 hours. It just, if I'm not going to sit here and play games on my laptop or something, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. There's too much to
yeah,
do. Yeah.
yeah. So, well, thank you for joining me here today, man. William has a particularly interesting story, and we're going to get into that. He actually is late to the game, you might say, in cybersecurity and how we landed in that. And so to kind of kick things off here, William, why don't you share a bit about your background? So kind of how you landed in tech, and specifically in security. And then after that, we'll kind of jump or dive deeper into some of your maybe even your early life experiences. But tell us how you got into technology and cyber.
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep this under 100 words. I joined the military right out of the Air Force, right out of high school, and they trained me in refrigeration and cryogenics, which translated to the private sector as heating and air conditioning. And then when I got out, I translated the skills to the private sector, did heating and air conditioning, commercial and industrial heating and air conditioning for a long time. And the older I got, the more my body started to complain. I realized this is a young man's sport. I need to start working more with my head and less with my back. So I started getting some education and whatnot. I joined the Ohio Air National Guard, and they got a great tuition assistance program. They pay 100% of your tuition. And I've gone on a number of deployments with them. And I was thinking that I'd get a college education and then get maybe some certifications and then do something in project management in HVAC. But on my last deployment, uh, whenever you go on a deployment, the way you say, try to come out of the deployment better than you went in, learn a language, lose some weight, take a class, or whatever. So I decided I've always had an affinity for IT. I'm like the family's tech support person. And I've had a few businesses in the past where I managed my own web servers and whatnot. And I've had an affinity for that. So I thought, well, I'll take some CompTIA courses and see what I can get. So I talked to a couple of guys that are in my guard unit. And I just knew they did IT. I didn't know what they did in the private sector. I said, hey guys, I want to get the A plus and the Net plus. What do you think? And they said, well, really, we recommend you get the Security plus because uh, if you're going to work for a defense contractor, you need that anyway. And then it's kind of assumed that you know A plus and Net plus. So that's what they recommend. So I took them at their word, got me some study material. 2 weeks later, took the course and passed it. And I told them, I said, hey guys, I got my Security plus. They're like, no, you didn't. I said, yeah, I did. I knocked it out. And they said, wow, that's really good. You know, we got guys in the unit that have been struggling with that. So I kind of had some confidence and some momentum. So then I rolled right into the CompTIA CISA Plus, which is the Certified Cybersecurity Analyst certification. Got that knocked out. And then towards the end of my deployment, I thought, well, I wonder what jobs are out there. Let's see if I can open some doors with this. And I got on LinkedIn, saw that Warren County was hiring, and I'm from Warren County, and they were hiring for a cybersecurity analyst. Come to find out, as their first cybersecurity analyst. I applied when I got home from did a phone interview, and then when I got here, we did the personal interview, and they offered me a job, and great opportunity, entry level opportunity. I was the only cybersecurity guy here, and I had a big mandate. Document our compliance against a framework and start digging in. And I've really had an opportunity as a first year analyst to do things that people probably spend a career trying to get access to. So my learning curve has been steep, hard, and fast. And I've really covered a lot of ground. And that's kind of how I got here. That is how I got here.
And then tell me about like so you have a military background, but tell me like before then, like as a kid, where'd you grow up? You mentioned before this call you went to King's High School. Are you from Cincinnati?
Yeah, from Cincinnati, born and raised in like the Mainville area. Um, I don't know if you know where Mainville is, and not too far from Kings Island or Mason. So I grew up there. I mean, I've left, I've gone, I've lived in Texas, I've lived in Georgia, I've moved around the world and traveled, but I always seem to come back to this area. I've seen a lot of a lot of communities. I've seen a lot of areas, and this is a nice area, nice, clean, safe area, good economy. I always seem to come back to it. But yeah, born and raised in this area, grew up in Mainville.
How did your early life experiences kind of shape your perspective on leadership, problem solving? I'd be curious to know too how, growing up, you landed in the military. I mean, it paid for college, but surely there was more to that story than, dollars.
Well, funny you should ask. So I come from a family of military veterans. My grandfather was a maintenance man on a frigate in the Pacific Theater of World War II. And then my dad was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force for 4 years. And then he ended up retiring from General Electric as a jet engine mechanic. So the veteran influence has been there, and everybody seems to have a mechanical aptitude. So growing up, I'd watch these old World War II movies, and I'd go out in the woods. I found a stick that looked like a gun. I'd play Army, or my dad would have some black iron fittings in the garage. I'd screw them together, make like a little machine gun, and go out and play Army and whatnot. But so that's kind of, I always knew that I was going to join the military. I always knew that I was going to be in there, probably the Air Force. Um, so that's how I kind of got into the Air Force. But that influenced my background. But because my grandfather and my father were these mechanical kind of guys, we always had tools around the house. And my dad worked second shift. My grandfather, he lived in Norwood. So I would take these tools and I would start projects. I'd start taking things apart, putting things together, building stuff. And I didn't have anybody to ask. I couldn't say, hey, Dad, how do I do this? Because my dad was at work. Or my grandfather, back then, to pick up the phone and call him just wasn't as easy as it is today. So I learned to problem solve and troubleshoot and find my own answers. I learned to develop some critical thinking skills and some troubleshooting skills at a really young age. And I think those have helped me out quite a bit as an adult. Um, I know as a manager, one of the frustrating things, not really frustrating, but one of the things that I don't like is like an employee brings you a problem, but no solutions. I mean, try to engage some gray matter, try to find some solutions. And even if your solutions are wrong, bring them to me and we'll talk it together. But don't just say, hey, what do I do next? How do I fix this? I don't ever say anything. I do try to coach them. But I think at a young age, I've learned how to do that on my own. And that's really helped me out immensely, especially in this role right here, where I'm learning everything for the first time new. If I was going to be going to my boss, Gary, every time I had a question, oh my God, it would drive me crazy. So being able to get my
You
answers
would
on
be
my
a CISO.
yeah, right. And yeah, that's probably my earliest childhood leadership or skills development story.
Man, you miss the airsoft generation. That's like my people, man. Is we
Yeah,
had airsoft guns, and you surely you guys had paintball and BB guns though, right? You would
yeah,
have grown up
paintball, but
with
that was
that.
like
Yeah.
paintball wasn't like what the airsofters are
You,
now.
yeah, you probably it's probably hard to find paintball arenas. I feel like that was like if your buddies were gonna play paintball, you just would do it in the
Just go to the
woods.
woods. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
airsoft is nowadays. So let me throw another little story at you. So I talked about how I had my own web servers and whatnot. I started a business back in 2015 selling body armor. Now, how I got into that is a whole nother story. But basically, I started selling body armor, started selling these ballistic helmets. And at first, my clients were like preppers, people getting ready for the zombie apocalypse. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was these airsofters. And these guys, I mean, they're buying legitimate, you know, Kevlar helmets and body armor and putting on these uniforms, and they got comm headsets and everything. And I don't want to say that they're LARPing, but they're giving themselves as much of a genuine experience as they possibly can. And it looks like a lot of fun. I've never done it, but it does look fun.
When I was a kid, man, they had they pushed out CO2 pistols, and those things were lethal, absolutely lethal. I had one, and they were awesome. They were
Yeah,
loud
they'll leave a
and they
mark.
were intense, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember when I was in youth ministry as a kid, man. We used to play in this church I went to in Mason. We used to play behind the building. There's a former factory, and which is just a ripe place for airsoft, and we used to play
Yeah.
for hours as a kid, man. So I am not a military brat. I did not grow up. I did not. Neither of my folks served, but my grandparents did both serve, and so that's certainly a something I admire about you and admire about others. So thank you for your service. Number one. And number two, tell me a bit about your values. So you shared a bit about your story, your upbringing. You shot sticks in the woods, so to speak, and
Yeah.
kind of primed you for a military career. But what kind of values do you have? What do you hold closely?
Well, I try. I didn't used to always be like this. The older I've gotten, the more important it's become. But I try to be the best person, quote unquote, person that I can. If I see litter on the ground, I'll pick it up and throw it away because I know everybody else just walks past it. I try to be kind to people. Like if I see them having a hard time, if I'm in traffic and someone flips me off or honks at me, I used to get mad at them, like, why they do that for? But now I look at them like, I don't know what they got going on. So I try to be empathetic. I try to do the right thing. I try to I value honesty and hard work. We're not robots. We don't have to work, from the time we get to work to the time we get off work. We can take breaks, stretch and whatnot. But when you're sitting at your desk, make a meaningful contribution to the organization. My dad taught me growing up that the only job security you got is to be the best, most valuable employee on the team. And I don't know that I'm the best, most valuable employee on the team, but I'm trying. And I don't anticipate any cuts. But if they did come down, I would hope that they would want to keep their heavy hitters on board, and I would be one of them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Let's jump into your career in tech. So, can you share about a pivotal moment or project in your career that really contributed to your growth? So, and before you hit that too, I think how this ties back into our conversation here is you talk about, man, if I brought every question that I had straight to my boss, Gary, I would not be. No, that would not be a good
Yeah.
situation to be in. Like that's one of the biggest things that I coach younger people on, man, is like, hey, if you have a problem, at least have some idea of what your solution could look like. Don't spend hours architecting an idea, but certainly have an idea of how you want to address or solve a problem. That qualifies you, I think, to your boss. It shows that you're taking initiative, you're thinking about it the right way, and so how that speaks to this question is like surely you've learned that from somewhere. Like I'm sure there was a moment in your career, maybe that was when you were overseas, but tell me about that moment for you that really contributed to your growth.
Okay. Well, a moment that really contributed to my growth is it's not tech related, but it's a moment that contributed to my growth. Back in 2015, 2016, I took a leave of absence from my guard unit and I went over to Iraq to work as a contractor. And I got hired by this company to be a project manager for an 11 kV overhead power distribution and 60 megawatt diesel fired power plant construction project at a forward operating base in Iraq. I didn't know the first thing about 11 kV overhead power distributions or diesel powered power plants, but I knew how to read blueprints and organize a project. So they hired me. And I show up at Camp Liberty, get off the Black Hawk helicopter. Someone drives me over to the camp. They introduce me, spend about a week training with those guys. And then they send me to my first assignment, which was Ford Operating Base Falcon. And they gave me $5,000 cash, a laptop, a cell phone with a local SIM card in it, and this thing called a BGAN, which was like a satellite dish antenna about the size of a laptop. You just flip it open and point it to where this huge satellite is so I can upload my reports. And they gave me some satellite drawings with some sketches, like this is where we think this is going to be, this is where we think that's going to be. And then when I got there, I was supposed to go to the mayor cell. Every army base has something called a mayor cell. And at this base, there was a major who was in charge. He was the base mayor. So I had to introduce myself to him. So flying on a Black Hawk helicopter, land, I got my helmet on, my body armor, my bags, and I walked to the mayor's cell about a half mile. I'm sweating and everything. He gives me a Frag 5 up armored Humvee for my transportation on base, puts me up in some temporary tent housing called transient tents. So I was living in transient tent. It's basically just a big GP large tent with open bay barracks looking thing where a bunch of people can live in there. And I went to work. So I started measuring things and mapping things and doing drawings and whatnot, answering my own questions again, figuring it out. And then I submitted my proposal back to home station. I said, this is what I think we need to do to get this project going. And they're like, holy moly, wow, good job. I mean, we did things we didn't even consider. That's going to work out really good. 2 weeks later, I had 65 guys show up. They were what they call NIPS. They were third country nationals. So NIP stands for Nepalese, Indian, Filipino, and Sri Lankan. So I had 65 guys from all of these different countries, but they were all legit tradesmen, high voltage electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatnot. And we went to town, and with limited understanding of 11 kV overhead power distribution and whatnot, and working with this international crew. We had some language barriers and whatnot, but I was able to identify guys who were leaders, and I put them in charge, made them foremen and supervisors and whatnot. And we got it done. We got it done under budget. We got it done ahead of schedule. It was my first big time project, and I really had to. I didn't have to like force myself to reach down and find leadership qualities. I think some of my experiences, early military experiences and childhood experiences, just prepared me for that opportunity, and I loved every second of it. It was a very rewarding experience, and a very professionally, it's a very good opportunity to develop some leadership skills.
Certainly. So there's a whole lot of just kind of figuring things out here in your story. And in security, cybersecurity, that's certainly a huge part of it in cybersecurity. It's just figuring things out. Like yesterday, you delivered a threat briefing at a group that we're part of called Go Cyber Collective, and that briefing talked about three different attack groups that are making waves in the marketplace, and you
Mhm.
just got to figure things out sometimes, man. And without guidance, a lot of support. I
Yeah.
think it's a really important quality to have. Well, what's a piece of advice you give to an organization that is very immature in their security posture? So they're trying to improve, they're very immature, and they're just trying to figure things out right in that way. What's a piece of advice you give based off of your experience and your role and what you do now?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is going to be an easy one. Adopt a framework. Unless you already have a framework that you are held to compliance with, like say CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System, or PCI DSS, or maybe some HIPAA regulations. If you have those frameworks you have to comply with, those are okay. Those are good starts. Even those have some security gaps in them. But if you don't have anything at all, I would adopt the Centers for Internet Security Controls Framework. It's essentially so the industry standard really and cybersecurity frameworks is NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. They got the special publication series, special publication 800, and it's robust and it's complex and it's comprehensive. And the sys controls, I joke and call them NIST light, because it addresses everything that NIST does, but it does in these manageable bite-sized pieces. And they've got these three implementation groups. If you're a young, mature organization, then you want to comply with IG1. Your goal should be to comply with as much IG1 as you can. As you mature, you can take on IG2, and then the most mature organization would be IG3, which includes like incident response, pen testing, stuff like that. And I would adopt that as my framework, and I would start with IG1. I would probably start with the first 5 controls, focus on the first 5 controls, and go through my network and say, I can see, do I have this? For example, controls 1 and 2, asset inventory and software inventory. You can't protect what you don't know what you have. So find out what I got. What's all dangling on my net? What's out there ARPing? What's talking out there? What applications do we have installed? Are we controlling those applications? Is anybody allowed to install any application that they want? Put some controls on that. Not that you're telling people they can't have that application. You're just putting a stopgap in there to where we stop and think about it. You ask me, I go look, is it actively being exploited right now? Are there any open CVEs? Do the developers support it? If so, yes, we can introduce it to our environment. But yeah, I would say adopt a framework and start documenting your compliance towards it.
Yeah, I think every organization that has a healthy cybersecurity culture, it's not that their applications in their environment runs through their cybersecurity analysts, engineers, but those engineers and analysts, they themselves will run through all of those items. Like there has to be a due diligence on what you're adopting inside your environment, and what you're describing there, right, with the first 5 controls of SIS is very simple. It's really a self-assessment. It's like an audit or an inventory of
Exactly.
what do you already what do you already have in place from a cybersecurity standpoint, and you can't protect what you don't know. It's a great quote from me, right? And so we always say to companies, like we get this all the time. You'll laugh at this, man, but like You guys are a much more mature cybersecurity organization, but like most companies we work with are not. They do not have a CISO or a cyber director. They might have a couple of IT managers that have a networking and infrastructure background that happen to know about, a little bit beyond their firewalls. All right. But there isn't a healthy security culture in all the places that we go to. And we always encourage them, hey, like you don't need a pen test. You need an assessment of like what you're currently doing.
Mhm.
We always get inquiries around, hey, can you do a pen test for us? And it's like, yeah, we can, but that's really expensive, number one. And number two, you're not going to learn a whole lot about your security posture. If you take a test that you never study for and you get a 40% on it, are you really learning? No, you're
No.
not learning. You just learned that there's a whole lot to learn. And it can be overwhelming of where to start. And so doing an initial assessment, be that with a partner, right, or doing that internally is just so crucial to maturing is you can't protect what you don't know that you have.
Yeah, so I mentioned adopting a framework, but let me back it up a little bit. Uh, Risk-based controls implementation, selection and implementation. So if you have developed some risk analysis skills and you got the horsepower, what I would then do is do the assessment, see where my gaps are, what CVEs do I have, what am I missing, and then go to the sys controls and select the controls exactly that you need to put in place to bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
In the absence of a mature risk uh, quantitative capability, just start plowing through the controls.
Yeah, that's good. And then I'll give a piece of advice too to some folks that might be watching this is like take the security framework out of it. What's something you can do that's basic cybersecurity practice? And you'll affirm this, William. You should just put MFA on any critical system, a system that touches maybe your financials, maybe your QuickBooks application lives on a specific cloud environment or
Mm-hmm.
server. Put MFA on that. Like no one should be able to touch that application without multi-factor authentication. Put that on your ERP platform. Put that on whatever systems have critical pieces of data that are critical to the livelihood of your business, right? Like we have a number of applications that we're leveraging. HubSpot's a great example of one we use, very common product that companies use in the marketplace. That product for some companies might not have a lot of sensitive data, but for us it does. Like we meet with like 15 to 20 clients a month, and we're talking with them about really significant high protect that info. So that's just one example. If you can identify in your environment what is most critical and put MFA on that. For some companies,
Mm-hmm.
like that's going to create fatigue in people, but you know it's going to really fatigue you if you get attacked and you
Yeah,
can't do anything about it. So that's you know it's
yeah, and another
there's
thing
a
too is
cost.
having, I'm sorry, to having MFA on any privileged accounts too. So if you got what we've got here, we've got
Yes.
our workstation accounts, and then any escalated any work that we do that requires escalated privileges, we got another account, and we have MFA on those accounts. So if we're going to get into a server and do any maintenance, we got an MFA to gain that access.
Yeah, that's great, man. And for the record too, like that's great for cyber insurance. Like every year you have premiums and you have a certain amount of dollars that you're paying for per user inside your company for your
Mm-hmm.
insurance, and that strengthens your security story. We actually did a panel on that earlier this year, and that was the carriers that we were interviewing. That was one of their pieces of advice is
Yeah,
MFA on privileged accounts. So the carriers really care about that stuff,
yeah.
ironically.
And if I was to throw a couple more things at you, things that you already know about, I would say awareness training for your staff is very important. It's cheap, it's almost a no-brainer not to have it. To have it, and don't do it annually. We do it monthly, and that might seem like a heavy operational tempo, but they're 2, 3 minutes long. They're entertaining. They're gamified, and our staff has learned a lot. We got admin staff who very low tech people. They know how to operate the computers that they work on, and they're contacting me. Hey, I just got this message, and there's something fishy about it. What do you think? We get the fish reporting button, and I encourage them to always use the fish reporting button. But still, they'll reach out to me, and it's encouraging to me because I can see these people who are not technical people recognizing these phishing emails and bringing it to my attention. And then incident response capabilities. So what's the joke? What's the saying? It's not a matter of if you get breached, it's a matter of when. And when you don't want to be figuring out how to respond is when it's happening. So develop develop the incident response plan, who's going to be activated, who you're going to contact, who's your insurance, who's your local FBI contact, who's your local law enforcement contact, and then put together some tabletops and exercise it. And I can't stress that enough.
Great feedback, great wisdom there. So moving into our last question here, this is a kind of a multi-pronged question, but like so William and I have been in technology for a while, and AI has been around a long time, and we think it's cool, but like we've known about AI for a long time. It's been around since really, I think, the 70s.
Mm.
It just happened to be that it went to market in ChatGPT a few years ago, and now people are not now the general public has access to it, a really powerful tool. And so I don't know about you, man, but like I'm tired of going to conferences and hearing about AI because it's just nauseating how
Yeah,
many
it's like the new
topics are
buzzwords,
on it.
single pane of
Yeah.
glass. Yeah,
That's right. It's like put AI powered behind whatever our product is. It's like a requirement now. Like we could say AI powered consulting. Like all of our consultants have an AI
you're right.
co-pilot,
You see a lot of people
right?
with
Like we could say that.
yeah, the web domains will be some sort of business.ai, whether or not they're in the AI or
Yeah.
not. Yeah,
Yeah. What next thing you'll see is like HVAC.ai.
right,
Like
right.
you'll see some kind of blue collar trade, like plumbing.ai. So tell me about what so you're CISO, and there's certainly been an AI craze inside of every industry, not just government. But I'm curious to hear about in your vertical. How have you kept how would you advise somebody keep their end users secure when AI is out there? Like anybody can throw sensitive data into ChatGPT, and congrats, you just created a major security risk for your company. But how have you kind of built that? In fact, you're kind of touching on that. How have you built that culture of keep staying secure in the world of AI?
Well, it all starts with governance. So we drafted a policy stating what is acceptable AI use and what isn't. Now, right now, we don't have any restrictions on what AI tool that you're using, but we do have requirements that you don't put anything, you don't upload any documents that have the name of Warren County in it, that has any PII in it, nothing proprietary. So let's say I've got meeting minutes and I want to get an AI summary. I do this all the time. And I'll go through and if you do a Teams meeting, you can record it, you get a transcript. I'll go through the transcript and I'll redact out anything that's specific. And then I'll upload that and say, give me a summary of what occurred. And then like 45 seconds later, I've got the minutes that I can share with everybody. And maybe I'll go back and put in the information to clarify the subject that we're talking about. So we have a governance policy that states what is acceptable and what isn't, like a AI acceptable use policy. Um, and that's really about it right now. There have been a couple of entities in the county that have wanted to purchase a platform that leverages AI, and I've done a product review to check it out to see if they're using like a publicly available open source AI model, or if it is something that's like hosted in an AWS bucket that's locked down and restricted.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, they were using a private AI tool as part of their engine for their platform. So we approved it.
We advise clients on pretty much the same exactly what you guys are doing, which is number one, develop some policy around it. And like if you could just put some language to what's acceptable in your use of it, like that's gonna help a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number two is identify some tools that they can use, and um, specifically, sometimes you need to reroute people because there is an eagerness and a vigor to pay for ChatGPT Enterprise because it's $25 a month, or there is some vigor to turn on Copilot because that's $20 a month, or to sign up for Grok or Claude or whatever, or whatever Meta's Gemini. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's very accessible and easy to do those things. But frankly, all of the applications that you're already paying for are leveraging AI
Yeah.
already. Like if you're for example, we use Canva for all of our digital marketing stuff. And that's a really, Canva is just an unbelievable digital marketing tool. And I'm not the first to tell you that, like everybody kind of knows that about it that's in that space. But that application is leveraging AI, and you can create graphics and illustrations and different videos just from
Mhm.
dictating a prompt to it. And so we always advise clients on, hey, like maybe you can reroute your folks away from those open sourced tools, right, that expose your data to the internet, but you maybe reroute them from there to tapping into what AI is being used internally with your internal applications. Like, how can you tap into that versus
Mhm.
reinventing the wheel, so to speak? So that's what our
Good advice.
second piece of advice is as well. So, well, thank you so much for your time today, William. Do you have any parting thoughts to cybersecurity leaders, IT leaders that are trying to grow and scale their career?
It's a marathon, not a race. It's a deep pool and it's very wide. Just take it one bite at a time, one step at a time. Try to chart out your plan, your path, what control you're going to implement, and just try not to get discouraged.
That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time. We'll talk
sure.
to you soon.
Thanks. Take care, buddy. See you.